Okay, this is for the first section of Chapter 2. Chapter 2 is all about graphical representations, and due to the abilities of technology, majority of your graphs will be created using Google Sheets, with the exceptions of histograms, which is 2.3. Okay, those will have to be created on pen and paper due to the program not really creating them very well or very accurately, and the formatting being very tricky. But we're going to start with simple broken line graphs. So broken line graph is a graph that uses points joined by line segments to display data. As with every graph, the axis titles and the main title tell you what the graph is about. However, one thing to keep in mind is when you're talking about graphs, there are two different variables. Remember that the independent variable goes on the horizontal, so side to side axis, and the dependent variable goes on the vertical axis, so the up-down axis. Okay, so when we're looking at reading graphs, so for example, the graph below shows the average snowfall in Regina, Saskatchewan by month. So it has all of its titles. So you have your big title, that's what the graph is about. You have what each axis represents. So this one represents snowfall. This one represents month. Okay, you have every month labeled. However, you only have 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 labeled. But you still have all of your points in between, so you're able to see exactly what each value is. Okay, so those are all important pieces of information that you need to make sure that you have when you're recreating graphs. Okay, so, but for now, we're just going off reading them. So, what month has the highest average snowfall and how much snow fell in that month? If we are looking at this graph, we can see that the only point above 20 is the one for December. We know it is for December. Okay. So the highest month is December, and it had an approximate snowfall. We can see that it is 1 above 20. So 1 above 20. So approximately 21 centimeters fell. Okay, so it's pretty easy to read a graph if it's done properly. And that's what you'll be learning how to do so that others can read your graphs as well. So then we have during what 3 months was there no snowfall in Regina? So you're looking at for 0 snowfall, and you have 1, 2, 3. So you have June, July, and August. Which makes sense. Summer months, we typically wouldn't want to see snow. Okay. And then we have during what month is the average snowfall approximately twice as much as the average October snowfall. So to do that, we need to determine what the average October snowfall is. We can see that it is right here, and it is 2 lines above 5. So 2 lines above 5. We know 2 plus 5 is 7. So we go 5, 6, 7. And we know 7 times 2 is 14. So we go all the way up to 14. And what do we have? We actually have 1. We can keep going across 2 points. Okay. So either one fits for an answer. We could do February or November. Okay. Okay, so those are pretty straightforward and easy to answer. And I want you to try build your skills number 60 on page 60 to 62, numbers 1, 2, and 3. Pause it, give it a shot, and come back. I'm just going to be writing the answers from now on, because I've noticed that there are certain people that are not actually listening to the videos, but just watching them. Okay. Okay, now that you have those done, you can check your answers of A and B. Sunday, she spent the most of $19. Okay. 2, you have A. If you have something along the same lines for word answers, that is okay. Okay, remember it just wants what is a possible activity she's doing. I just put exercising in general. Okay, and then you have 3, which is A and B. Okay, if you were stuck on any of those, try to think about it, look at it. It's good to struggle. When you struggle in math, your brain makes more connections. Okay, so that's all about reading graphs. But now what about making them so that yours look like the one that was above? Because I did create that graph using Google Sheets. Okay, so creating your own graphs. So remember, you will be using, I'm sorry, my chair is so squeaky, Google Sheets. Okay, this can be found by clicking on the waffle in Google. Once you're signed in, clicking on Sheets, and it'll open up a spreadsheet program. So the example we're going to be using is Jacob owns a small appliance repair company. He tracked the company's net profits over a 10-year period. He is examining the data to see if there is a trend and to decide if he can increase the salaries of his employees. Okay, so the very, very first thing that you have to do, okay, for graphing is you have to input the data into the Sheets program, ensuring that your independent variable is in column A. So independent is your top one in your tables of values. Okay, and then your dependent is in column B, so it should look something like this. Okay, once you do that, I will do this all in the program, but I do have the steps for it in your notes as well. Okay, so we are looking at year and profit in thousands of dollars. Whoops. Thousands of dollars. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight it so you can see how it highlights it in light blue. And then I'm going to click on Insert and Chart. And it's automatically going to generate the type of chart that it thinks I want. Okay, my computer apparently is deciding to be very slow. So as you can see, it automatically created a line chart. So I can see that I have my axes titles in there, but it also automatically generates a type of title that is just one axis versus the other, which is not an accurate title that we want, and that is something that we will need to change as well. So these are the first 2 steps. Okay, so when we are altering our graphs, we can double click and we can just type in the title that we want. So companies annual net profit 2000 to 2009. Okay, so it can be that simple to change it. Okay, we also have to change this line because we don't want a solid connected line. Okay, so if I click on the line, you'll see that it takes me to series. Okay, So I can change to point size, play around with it. You can see what 7 looks like. You can see what 10 looks like. You can see what 14 looks like. Okay, so the bigger you make it, the bigger the dots. I usually like to stay around 7. Then I also like to change the line type. So I'm going to change it to a dashed line, but you can change it to a dotted line to see what it looks like. You can change it to a dash dot line to see what it looks like, a long dash line, or a long dash dot line. Okay, for the sake of this graph though, we want the standard dashed line. And I'm just going to change it to black because I prefer for my graphs to be done in black and white. Okay, but I also don't like the grid lines that it gave us because it's very hard to read this graph. We do not have what we want, so it's really hard to see what each value is except for ones that are exactly on the line. But this can be changed by clicking on your axis, okay? Setting your minimum value. So we do want to start from 0, but we don't need to go all the way up to 85. So we can go to 65. Okay, so we can see that. Let's go to 66 since our top value. Okay. Then if we want our grid lines and ticks, we want our minor spacing as well, but we got to get our major one up first. So let's see what happens if I put 5 in. Okay, so now it's going to show me every 5, that makes it a little bit easier to read. Okay, so then if I want minor ticks, I want 4 in between each one because our difference between 0 and 5 is 4. So that makes it even easier once again. But now what about our horizontal axis? We can kind of guess what each one is, which is fine. But what happens if I do 1? Oh, look at that. Now we have every year in there, and we don't even have to worry about minor spacing types. So we have our major spacing types in there. We have our year, we have our profit, thousands of dollars, we have our proper title. When we have this done, you can actually just copy and paste this into a document, and you can submit the document on the Google Classroom. It will create submission sections for each of the units that you are working through with the notes attached to them. Okay, so does that look a lot better now than from what we started with? I think it does. Okay, so that is how you create a graph using the Google Sheets program. So as you can see, input the data, highlight it so that you have it all. Make sure it highlights it in light blue and it is not just outlining it in dark blue, because if you click and drag down, it will just copy whatever is in the first box down into every other box. However, thankfully it is a Google program, so you can go back and get any version of the document that you have ever created. Okay. Then you have inserting your chart, the type automatically generated. It is important to note that this is not the correct type of graph, so we need to alter the formatting of it. And that will be a common thing throughout this whole chapter. Okay, you have your basics for changing your title, changing your series, your dash lines, your point sizes, all that fun stuff. Altering the grid lines so they fit so you can actually read accurate information from the graph and you're not trying to guess, oh, that looks about this value. Okay. Now you can try build your skills numbers pages 64 to 65, numbers 4, 5, and 6. These are all generating graph questions. So these will be completed on Google Sheets and turned in on a Google Doc. Remember, once you are done the graph, you can copy and paste it into Docs Just make sure you do not link it to your Google Sheets, because if you do, when you go through and eventually get rid of that data, it will actually wipe out the graph from your document as well. Okay. Okay, now that those are good to go, we have a few more last little bits to cover. So when you are looking at a graph, there are two different ways to use the information provided. You can estimate a value between two known values, and this is called interpolate. It is in between, so it is interpolate between two known values. But then you also have estimate a value beyond a known range of values. And this is called extrapolate, because you have to do extra work. Okay, so those are two little pieces of information that you needed to be able to move on to page 67, 68, number 7 and 8. Give those a shot. Come back when you're done. Okay, now that you are done, I'm going to put basic answers. If you have something slightly different, but it is along the same lines, you are okay. Okay, so we have driving, if I can spell, from 8 to 11 and 12 to 5. Okay, and we have that they're probably, they fill up at 12. So those are the big points. I know there are some straight points. Those would be when they're stopped. Okay, and then you have 8. A is a decrease. B around 325. C around 330. Okay, remember this is approximately. Okay, so if you do not have the exact same number, but it is somewhere in the same range, you are good to go. Okay. So the one good thing about Google Sheets is your program usage is the same no matter what type of graph you are trying to put in. So I will do this one from start to finish with you, and you will get to see what it looks like to create it from start to finish. So go back to Google Sheets, sheet 2. Okay, so we have year. Apparently I cannot spell. Regina and so years were 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, and 2010. Regina was 232,000, 230,000, 230,000, 166, and 132. Then we had Vancouver, which is 571, 594, 592, 665, 685. Okay, so now that my data is put in, instead of just highlighting the 2, I'll highlight the 3 and insert chart. Give it a minute to load, and you see how it automatically generates a double line graph, which is great. It makes it a lot easier for us. But we don't want a line graph. We want a broken line graph, which means we need to make sure that it's a broken line. So dashed line. Okay, point color, 7, circle, we're all okay. Then we have our other one, dashed line, point size 7. So notice how they're different colors. It's important to keep that variation between the two so that they are not getting confused as to which is which. Okay, this axis title is very large, so we're going to go 100,000 to 700,000. Okay, just to make it a little bit more zoomed in on what we want. Okay, the major grid lines. Let's see, step value every 100,000. Okay, and minor count, we'll put 1 in between so you can see where the 50 mark is. So now that gives us a graph that looks like that. And we have already a line for each year, so we don't need to alter those values. But see how it says Regina and Vancouver. Regina and Vancouver, what? We don't know what the question is asking. Okay. If we look back at our books, I believe it was average house price in those two cities. Let me just double check. Oops, went past it. Okay. So we take the title that is right from the table of values, and it is house prices, Regina and Vancouver, 2006 to 2010. Okay, so then we are done. Okay, you can click the 3 dots and you can copy chart. Okay, and then you can click on go back to your docs and paste it in there. Remember to paste it unlinked. Do not paste it linked, because then it makes it very hard. Oh, guess what I missed? We don't have a title on this one axis here. So, vertical axis title. Cost. Houses. Now we go. And it's in dollars. Perfect. Now we can copy and paste it in. We have our titles. We have our grid lines to make it a little bit easier to figure out our values. We have our legend that tells you which is which. We have a proper graph title, not at one axis versus the other or one title versus the other. So that is good to go. For numbers 9 and 10, you are generating them on the program. So you can go ahead and do those now. And then we will keep going. Okay, if you have those done, those are both completed on the program, so remember to copy them into a docs and make sure that you submit them to me so that they are done, and I know they are done and you get the marks for them being done. Okay, so when we are looking at graphs, one thing that we need to be careful of is what scale we choose to show the information on and how that impacts how the reader is going to interpret the information. So if you are looking at the top graph, the cost of sheet metal by year, it looks like it's going all over the place. It looks like it's dropping like crazy and then rising like crazy and dropping back down and going up a little and down a little and up a little. But that's because if we look at the scale, it starts at 500 and it only goes to 750. That's only a $250 difference. which, yeah, might seem like a lot, but we're talking about cost per ton, so that's not too bad. However, if you look at one that goes all the way from 0 to 750, all of a sudden, those big peaks don't seem like very big peaks, and the graph actually seems quite a bit flatter. So remember, when you are choosing your axes for your graphs, to pick ones that accurately represent the information so that we don't end up with very misleading graphs. Okay, when you are looking at these, I would honestly, in my opinion, I prefer graphs like this because it is easier to gain information. However, it distorts the trends. Graphs like this, it is easier to see the overall trends, but your scale is so much larger that it's hard to see exactly what is going on. So you can't gain accurate information from this graph, but you can see what the trend is, the cost over the years. Okay. The other one, you can gain a little bit better information as far as accuracy goes. Okay, so it depends what you're creating the graph for. Then you have builder skills number 11 and 12. Okay, I think you guys are good to go on those. Once you have those complete, you can move straight on to practice your new skills. Page 76 to 79, numbers 1 to 5. If you want to answer all of those on the Google Docs program and submit them that way, you are more than welcome to. Okay, let me know if you need any help, as long as I'm not in the middle of teaching a lesson to any other classes.